Another episode here of Getting There with Guys, where we talk about the career journeys of media members, coaches, athletes, business owners, and more. For our visual side, a little surprise, we've got a new background. For our audio side, you see a name that you might be familiar with from the Levac and Gosh show, but it's a surprise because it's a different version of that name. We'll explain that in a second here. It is Matt Woods from the Albany Empire. So, Matt, for those who might not be familiar with you, take us to a younger version of Matt Woods, 6, 7, 8 years old. Where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be as a kid? And was it that same dream job you wanted when you were 18 years old?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. As a kid, I was one of those kids. Growing up here in Albany, I went to Shaker High School, and as a young kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, I couldn't stay inside. Any chance I got, I wanted to be out in my backyard with my neighbors, whether it was playing wiffle ball, football, basketball on the street, Foursquare. It didn't matter the sport. I just was always trying to compete. I loved running around, being outside. So kind of as a young kid at an early age, I knew that I wanted to be involved in sports. I wanted to run around, and I wanted to have, that blood flowing every single day in that competition, which brings every athlete out to the court, the field, whatever it might be to get that competitive edge. So with that, like I mentioned, I went to Shaker High School here in Latham, locally in the Capital Region. And I was a 3-sport athlete there, playing football, basketball, and lacrosse. But at the end of the day, the sport that always stuck so dear to me was football. So it was great to be able to go to Shaker, a program that has really grown and been extremely competitive here in the area, playing in multiple sectional title games, making a state run. So it was great to be in the Capital Region, such a place of high-level athletics, both at the high school level and the college level. And now we're seeing at the professional level, although there's been a couple iterations of arena football here. Now with me working with the Empire, I love where I'm at because I'm a part of another organization that loves to win and compete for championships.
Yeah, I'm excited to continue to show through that journey of how you end up at that spot. Let's go back to Shaker because, as I like to tell college athletes or college athletes who are aspiring to be in the spot you were at, you are privileged. You're fortunate enough to be recruited by colleges. Take us through that recruiting process for you. What college started to recruit you and what levels, and how did you ultimately make your decision for the next place you'd attend?
Yeah, so probably around after my junior year, where I played a little of a hybrid role on offense and defense, I got to get some looks from various different colleges at very different colleges at different levels. Where I really started out were these kind of college junior days, and I went to a bunch of them with the Ivy League. I attended Cornell's, Yale's, and some of the other schools, Dartmouth as well as some of the Patriot League schools. And what the nice piece of those was that even though the camps in these junior days were held at those universities, you got exposure to a lot of different levels. There were coaches from other Division I schools, Division II schools, and Division III schools. So as a high school athlete, it was great exposure to be able to get seen by various different coaches. And due to that, it helped me get set up on opening the door for a lot of those conversations. And from there, I had great opportunities to meet various coaches coming to the high school, meeting them in person, and then let that run into the opportunity to go on some college visits, kind of at the end of my senior year, really trying to make that decision of, okay, where's my landing spot going to be? And I went on some visits to Ithaca, Hobart College, St. John Fisher, to name a few, as well as Holy Cross. And kind of when the chips started to fall kind of in different spots, as you know, as a Hobart alum, I was fortunate to be on campus and check out the beautiful sights of Geneva, New York. I was able to build a great relationship with the coaching staff there, and Coach DeWall being my recruiting coach. And it just felt like a perfect fit for me. So even though I had the great experience of checking out some of the great universities, in the upstate New York area, and beyond, I kind of found myself just going 3 hours north from Albany, to a small little town in Geneva, New York, but fell in love with it because it's a special place.
And just to clarify a few things for those who didn't follow your career, you were recruited by most schools as a quarterback?
Yeah, so as in high school, I played quarterback and safety, but towards the end of my career, my senior year, I predominantly played quarterback. So I was recruited as a quarterback. I did have some schools reach out to me to play receiver in defense. At the same time, most of my film was as quarterback. And like, as I mentioned early on, as a kid, I just loved playing sports. I loved playing football. So my position was quarterback, but at the same time, I was open to changing. Just at the time, quarterback was in my mind. So I really kind of took the offers and the interest at the schools that pursued me as quarterback first and foremost. But then kind of later as my career developed, some changed, which we can get into a little bit too. But yeah, right out of the gates, I got recruited as a quarterback.
Thank you for that tease. We will definitely get to that. I see you hung out with Levac and I long enough. You're getting how this podcast and teasing goes, right? So, and one other thing to clarify too, because at your age and where it is through that recruiting process, you're at this, I want to say like the front end of high school athletes really being able to make their own tapes, where we've seen the evolution of posting it on social media. We've seen more athletes go to Instagram and Twitter and wherever it might be and show like, hey, I took a visit to this school, which 15 years ago never happened. Like, unless you're at the D1 level, if you were a Division II or Division III recruit, rarely did you see anybody ever post about a visit or an offer, because those things are just different. For you, did you make your own tape, or were you still in the process of having your coaches kind of take us through? Because some younger athletes are probably watching themselves and making their own tape now.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of hybrid of both. I was fortunate at Shaker to have some great coaches with me who had connections at the college level, and they helped me hand in hand build my own highlight tape. And it was extremely helpful to me because as a high school kid, I didn't really know much about it. And even though that was only 9 years ago for me, to see how far things have come, it's crazy. Because even on social media now, back when I was getting recruited, I never posted on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook my huddle highlight film. I was sending it out via emails to coaches that I was getting on business cards, or pulling off of emails that they sent me. And it was all via email. And just seeing now, with my involvement, I help out at the high school here at Shaker as well, and see the development of how similar it was when I was going through the process. I see the glimpses of it, but also how vastly different it is with the exposure that social media gives these kids to be able to get the retweets, get the follows, get the shares. And you can really get your highlights tapes and film out to any coach anywhere, no matter if you're on the East Coast, the West Coast. And I think it's a cool development that you're able to see not only at the college level where we see getting tape out to pros, you're able to see at the high school level now, getting it out to those college coaches at the Division 1, 2, and 3 levels.
And by the way, if you post that highlight tape, let's say in like 2012 or 2013, you still might be able to find it. Or hell, it's 2022 when we're taping. We can go back and post the Matt Woods Shaker highlight film on social media or YouTube if we want at some point. Mine is out there. Our pal Levac, who already gets a second mention in this podcast already, I lost the bet to him. So my Salvia highlight tape is out there on YouTube. We will get the Matt Woods Shaker highlights, the full tape, somehow, some way up on YouTube. We'll find out a way to do it, though. So you mentioned you eventually decided on Hobart College in Geneva, New York, our fellow alma mater. I was going to rock some Hobart gear, but mine is now a decade plus and 3 presidents ago. Yours is a little closer to what's going on. But let's go to day one. August, Geneva. What was that first welcome to college football moment like for you in Geneva?
It was awesome. At the same time, it was terrifying. I mean, being a high school kid going to college for the first time, going away from home is terrifying in and of itself. But now I'm showing up to campus 2.5 weeks before freshman orientation starts. I've really only been on campus for maybe 48 hours on my overnight visit. And I'm walking into camp. I'm walking into a locker room full of grown men who are looking to go and compete for championships and hold a high standard that the Hobart Statesmen hold. So at the same time, I know all summer long, I've been working in the local gym. I've been running. But at the same time, you never really know the magnitude of what the expectation is and standard of a college locker room is and a college program is. At the same time, from the day I stepped on campus, from my recruiting visit to my first day of camp in August, I was welcomed with open arms, not only by my coaching staff, by my teammates, the training staff, everyone on campus. And I think that's what makes Hobart a special place, because as I mentioned, as a young man going from high school to college, it's a big moment and it's a nerve-wracking experience. So to have people aware of that in a football program as coaches and as older players, as mentors to look up to. It's a very comforting feeling early on when you settle in that first day and say, okay, I'm going to be okay here. And then you can go out and play football and have fun and do what you're meant to do.
Day by day, practice by practice, the little things like finding out where you have to go for breakfast, remembering your playbook, knowing what time film is, those things continue to add up and make you become that college athlete that you are. Also, another thing here for time perspective for younger people who might be listening, there was a process through the NCAA where double sessions were eliminated and camp began a week sooner. Was that involved with your tenure at a Hobart? Did you have double sessions, or were you in that mix of it getting chopped up?
Yeah. So my freshman year, we were the traditional double sessions where we'd go out. It was modified still. A lot of times our first session was more of a, at least early in camp, was a more of a walkthrough out on the turf. And then it would be a more fully padded practice in the second practice. But once you got halfway through camp, it was traditionally a morning uppers practice where you weren't in full pack, but you were still going after it each day, one-on-ones, competition. Guys were getting after it. I mean, at the end of the day, those were the dog days of camp, or are the dog days of camp. And at the college level, just like at the professional level, those are the days that the depth chart is really built. And you don't really understand that early on as a freshman because you're kind of in that shock and awe phase still. But that's where the depth chart is built. So like you said, the 2 days was there early on for me. Starting my sophomore year, though, is when the rule change happened and you can only do one padded practice a day. So that's where we became a traditional, we would usually alternate where we'd have a full padded practice in the morning one day and then maybe just go shorts and T-shirts, more of a amplified walkthrough at night or in the afternoon, and then flip the other day just to save our bodies.
This may not be unique to Hobart, but knowing from the coaching staff and having that familiarity you and I have from similar coaches, quarterbacks were under a different amount of, I think pressure is the right term here, because quarterbacks had film not just in double sessions and everything else, but I know during the season, you guys used to have the alarm clock set a little bit earlier, right? Did Coach Drock still have those early morning wake-ups? Let's just do the quarterback schedule, if you remember it as best you can, before we get to that transition. Quarterbacks, right? You know what I'm talking about in this Hobart College world. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had quarterback meetings, which were basically, I mean, during camp, it wasn't, you didn't really notice the difference because camp, you were the only people on campus. So it was football 24/7. The quarterback meetings really dug in when the season started because now you're factoring in, you got your practice a day, typically in the afternoon. You have your classes in the mornings, but you also have a lift. So Coach Drock would always have our quarterback meetings, which would be our entire quarterback room, and we'd go in and we'd watch film from the practice before, or we'd be on Chalk Talk drawing up plays against defenses with the pass pros. And at the time, as a freshman quarterback, at least at the high school level, I watched film for sure, but I never really broke down coverages and alignments as much as you do at the college level. So that was a big learning curve for me. Learning a whole offensive playbook is one thing, but also having the ability to identify a defense, call out a protection, see a coverage, and that's before anything moves. It's hectic. So when you as a young pup freshman get dropped into a quarterback room with an extremely high level quarterback coach, as well as some upperclassmen quarterbacks, like I said, you're nervous. You know what I mean? You're getting up on that board, having to draw the X's and O's, and sometimes you just don't know the play, and you're embarrassed because you're up on the board of, hey, it's my time to shine, and sometimes you just don't know because you're young and you haven't been able to grow into the playbook yet. But yeah, the quarterback meetings made the days a lot longer. Often we'd get in there around 6 o'clock because there'd usually be a 7 a.m. lift. If you weren't in the 7 a.m. lift, you were either in the noon lift because we'd be practicing at 4 o'clock. So you'd either have 7 a.m. lift, typically an 8 o'clock classes all day long. Now, if you didn't have that early lift, you were in the lift at noon, finish the day with classes, get some treatment in, go to practice, done with practice around 7:15. And then often you're back to the library or, get into the dining hall right before it closes with your fellow teammates, getting some calories in and getting your workload done for the rest of the night just to do it all over again the next day.
That's exactly how it goes. And Coach Jock, just to add for some perspective here, former quarterback at Western Michigan, through to Greg Jennings, of course, the NFL, teammates with Jason Babbitt, and doing his thing now as a head coach at the D3 level. Just shout out to Coach Jock. So we've teased it already a few times here. Will you make that transition from quarterback to tight end? And so many, especially Division III athletes, make a position change. Take us through your unique story of how you shifted from quarterback to your new position and why that change came about.
Yeah, so coming in as a quarterback, like I said, there's a learning curve. So I found myself kind of in the middle towards the bottom of the depth chart as a freshman with the other freshman quarterbacks. I had 3 upperclassmen ahead of me my freshman year. But lucky enough for me, one of the tools in my tool belt that I had from high school was I was a long snapper. So I actually, as a quarterback in college, was the starting long snapper for the varsity team. So as a freshman, I would play JV quarterback. We'd have a JV season, and I'd suit for Saturdays with the varsity because I'd be the long snapper, which was the running joke on the team because, we'd go out on punt pro, and there was this tall 6'5", 6'6", 210-pound skinny quarterback running out there, and I had my starting two middle linebackers as the personal protectors. I had our 2 nose tackles as my guards, and I just had behemoths next to me, and I couldn't have been feeling more confident because I would talk a little trash and I would run my game because I would tell people, hey, this is a quarterback out here. And I also had the entire starting defense around me to back me up in case everyone got after me. So as a freshman during the season, I took a lot of quarterback snaps, but at the same time, I had the opportunity to be on special teams and be on scout. And I think one of the best pieces of advice from my college career that I can give to young high school kids going into college is be adaptive, be willing to adapt to not just your singular position or role, but be willing to go and get on special teams, be willing to go get on scout, because due to me being on scout, it was me and another freshman quarterback. And as we know, there's only one quarterback that can play. So on scout, with me being a bigger body, at times I would get reps at tight end and wide receiver just to give our defense a good look because I was a bigger body. I would give a good scout look. And due to that, I was able to put some tape on film from practice and everything. So we went through my freshman year, and basically going into the spring ball season, we had 2 guys graduate, a freshman transfer at tight end, and we were left with 1 tight end in our system, which typically we ran a 2 tight end, sometimes 3 tight end sets. So the coaching staff reached out to me and said, hey, you're the only guy on our roster who has the frame and strength to be able to adapt to the tight end position. You got to put weight on, but it's possible because you have an off season ahead of you. And you played quarterback where, as I mentioned, you're expected to know not only your position, but everyone around you. So for me, it was easy to kind of change the tight end, at least from a mindset, brain kind of side of things, because I already knew the position of tight end. I knew the shifts, I knew the blocks, I knew the routes. So it was more just okay, now I need to change physically, put on some weight to be able to block inside the box, but keep my athleticism to stay outside. So that's when that transition happened, was really my first spring ball. From my freshman year to my sophomore year, I moved over to tight end. I had a big off season of just putting on weight, putting on strength, and then was able to have a pretty solid role in the offense as a sophomore moving forward.
The advantage of making sure you know the plays you touched on there as a quarterback, knowing the offense. And if you're making that change from guard to tackle or center, or defensive tackle, defensive end, you have that advantage too. Another great piece of advice: make sure you're kicking butt on scout team and learning all the positions and paying attention. All great advice for whether it be football or any side of college athletics. Sophomore, junior, senior year, I don't mean to bunch this up into one story, but I feel like it's the best way to do it. You have a lot of success, man. Your team has success. You individually have success. That shift from quarterback to tight end not just helped you perform well as an individual, but helped your team win. And if you can, just kind of combine those seasons. As much as I'd love to break down Hobart football over those 3 years, I think the best way to do it is that it worked out well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was able to win a league championship, a Liberty League championship at Hobart. We went to a playoff berth where we actually had the opportunity that same year of winning the league to host Division III powerhouse Mount Union. And it was the first time, I believe, in a decade that Mount Union played a first round playoff game on the road because they lost their last week of the season. We won our league. So we actually had the great honor to host mighty Mount Union in, frigid, windy, in Geneva, New York. And even though they were Ohio guys, it was a great experience to see a Division III perennial powerhouse come to our place, host them. And even though we fell short that day, compete for, another shot in the NCAA Division III playoffs. But in those 3 years, I mean, there was a lot of great memories, a lot of great stories. Some of the things I loved the most of being at Hobart and playing in the Liberty League was teams like RPI and Union were rivals of ours. And for me, as a 518 kid, I almost liked playing on the road more than I did at home, even though I loved playing at Hobart, was because I got one home game a year. You know what I mean? We usually split with RPI or Union. So for me to be able to come back to the 518 for those 3-4 years of playing in college and play in front of my family, my friends, some of my coaching staff, that I played for here in the Capital Region, it was a cool honor to add on top of the great experience I had at Hobart, was to be able to come back home once a year and play Union, who's a big rival of Hobart, play RPI, who we've built a rivalry over just because really competitive, tight games all the time that I was there. So my time at Hobart as a Hobart athlete, I wouldn't trade it for anything, because it was a great experience to be able to hold the honor of being able to, a senior captain my senior year, to lead the Statesmen and have that honor of, hold that tradition of what a statesman man is. It was a really cool experience to have that opportunity.
As much fun as much success you have out in the Finger Lakes, they eventually tell you do have to leave campus. You can't sleep over in Saga. You cannot hang out at Joe's Hots or Beef and Brew. You have to leave. They tell you got to go. You graduate, all that good stuff. Take us postgraduate. What was your major? And do you land a job in that field you're hoping for that first 6 months to a year post-graduation?
Yeah, so I was an economics major and an entrepreneurial studies minor. So going into the college, I wasn't one of those guys who knew, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. I didn't really know, but I liked the idea of business and just the mechanics around it. And even though I know it's an extremely broad spectrum, Hobart was a great place for that, because I had exposure to all different levels and ranges of economics, from international to domestic to the markets to everything in between. And I had the opportunity, due to Hobart's excellence with their alumni network as well as the football program, I was able to land an internship between my junior and senior years at a financial services firm, where I got the ins and outs of being a financial advisor. And for me, I felt like it was a great opportunity, because as a highly competitive driven athlete, I wanted to be in an environment where I was going to be active, where I wasn't just behind a desk as a 9 to 5 crunching numbers. I wanted to be able to be out on the field, meeting people, talking to people, making an impact. And, just each day kind of having a different curveball thrown at me, not knowing that this day might lead to this conversation or that conversation. So with that, I had the great opportunity of interning with them in between my junior and senior years, stayed in contact, and was fortunate enough to start with them postgraduate out of school in May of 2019. And then from there, I kind of just hit the ground running. I went out and I got a couple of my licenses to help me just get registered properly for the world ahead of me. And I was able to dive in feet first and learn a lot. And similar to, as I mentioned, as a high school kid coming into a college locker room and being able to adapt to situations, I felt the same way in my first true job, is that I was kind of shell shocked. You come in as a college kid and now you're in the real world. I'm wearing a suit every day. I'm taking high level examinations, and you have to adapt, because every single day is a little different. Every single day is a little bit trickier. And when you thought you had this one right, you got that one wrong. And you're always learning, but you have to be able to adapt day to day to be able to, meet those ebbs and flows of the successes and failures that everyone faces in every career. But to me, that's what helps you find your traction and move in the right direction.
Yeah, you're staying competitive. You're finding out that you got to grind at it a bit, learn a bit. All those things we just touched on as you being a college athlete happen in that first employment opportunity and that first occupation you're getting paid to actually do. and it's in a field that you actually wanted. That's so rare at times too, that someone may major in something and that first job is not in what they majored in, which is fine. It's okay. Sometimes you have to, it's part of the journey. It's part getting there. Look at that, leading up to the title of the podcast and everything else. So again, you're unique in this spot because you're a Capital Region native. And for someone listening in Syracuse or Utica, Herkimer, Watertown, they may not know about the history of indoor football and how important it is here to the Capital Region. You eventually moved into this role as a part of the Albany Empire. But before you tell that story of how that opportunity comes about, did you at all as a kid follow indoor football and understand how big it was here in the Capital Region?
So as a kid, I mean, I always followed all ranges of football. And honestly, my earliest memory of arena football here in Albany was the Conquest. I remember as a little kid, hazy moments of going to the games. But one thing that I really remember is they used to have these big foam pirates looking swords. And I remember as a kid getting one at one of the games, and it was the coolest thing ever because it was arena football, which was a brand of football, a style of football that I've never seen before, but they were throwing balls in the crowd. They had crazy performances going on the field. And my biggest takeaway is I got this foam finger type sword that I thought was the coolest thing from the Albany Conquest. So that was my first exposure to arena football in Albany. And then luckily kind of as I, grew up and started to learn more and see the news and stuff like that, I was able to see, the birth of the Empire and the growth of the Empire, winning now 2 championships and now fortunately being able to have the ability to be a part of the organization and trying to help us go win a 3rd.
Yeah, let's find out. How did it happen? How did you land this job with the Albany Empire?
Yeah, so kind of going back to my first job at a school, I was in this advisor role, and as we all know, the pandemic hits and world changed for everyone. It became difficult for me to be able to do some portions of my job just because we all had to live through cameras and Zoom, and it was tough. So I saw the Empire were having their season; they were grinding through COVID, which was a great outlet to a lot of people. Falling into those mask mandates and everything, but the season went on and the Empire went on to go win a championship. And I was fortunate enough to get in contact with the team owner, Mike Quarta, who is awesome. And he owns Techie's Fire and Water Restoration, which and I was able to have open conversations with Mike of just like, hey, I'm business minded, I'm business background, but at the end of the day, I love football. I love sports, and any way I can incorporate the two, to me, is a no-brainer. So Mike was great with me to have a couple sit downs and just have conversations about what his outlook of the organization was going to be, where he wanted to take it, and what his expectations for me were. And it aligned perfectly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to bring in my business background and experience into the Empire and help the organization in that way, but also get my football fix of being able to see being a part of an organization, being kind of a part of a locker room and back in that infusion of football. So that's kind of where I was able to get started, just getting in contact with Mike and then just having open conversations from there with the opportunities that they were able to present.
And you've continued to build on those opportunities. Right now, you are the vice president of the Albany Empire, director of sales. I don't know if your title's changed in the last 24 hours. You're moving so quickly up the franchise. Is that good, vice president, director of sales? Did you get a promotion between the last time I talked to you and now?
Yeah, so starting out when I joined the team, I was primarily in just the sales role. I was overseeing all of our partnerships and sponsorships, as well as our season ticket sales for the majority of the offseason. And then as we've kind of approached closer to the season and there's been just a lot going on with the organization, my job has evolved into both working on the partnership side of things as well as the ticket side of things, but also being able to help with true, team operations, work alongside our team president, as you've mentioned, Jeff Levac, and work hand in hand with him to help run the day-to-day operations of a professional football team while being able to still take care of my side of things with the sales aspect. So my role and my title has evolved in the last 3 or 4 months. At the same time, for me, I couldn't be happier for the opportunity that Mike and Jeff have given me to be able to step into a more evolved role, a more hands-on role, not only on the sales side of things, but on just the whole operation side of things, to have my impact and also just learn a lot as I go day by day.
Wherever you live, whether it's Albany, Glens Falls, Schenectady, Glenville, Syracuse, Geneva, Rochester, it is worth it to make the drive to MVP Arena and check out NAL football. It's going to be awesome. How you can get tickets, we're plugging it right here on our video site. If you've been watching our ticker below, we've got the information of how you can order your tickets today. If you're listening on our audio side, just go to our episode description. The number's right there. The website's right there. You can order your tickets today to help out our guy, Matt Woods, Jeff Levesque, Mike Corda, the Albany Empire, and more. We are taping this just a few weeks before kickoff. And I'm sure if I ask you this question again in July, and I ask you this question at the end of the season, you might give me 3 different answers, and that's totally fine. But this difference between being an athlete and now being in a management role, have you enjoyed it? Have you learned? And again, like just as of right now, how has that felt so far these first few months in the role?
It's been awesome. And it's been really changed the last couple of weeks because our guys just got to camp about a week and a half ago. So all the months before, it's just been that management role, but I never really got the taste of the football aspect. And being a guy who has been a part of a locker room my whole life, seeing the guys in the facility, being able to be down at practice, even being able to interact with them just as they go through their day-to-day routine, it has been absolutely awesome. And it's been also very different being on the other side of it. You know, I understand what the athletes are going through. I was laughing with some of the guys today because we're now a little bit more than halfway through camp. And the camp legs, as I know far too well, are setting in. You know, guys are hobbling around. They got tight backs. Their knee, the ice bags are on the knees. So from that perspective, I don't miss that athlete side of it because I know those days too well. Of you go from practice right into the ice tub, right back onto the training table. But it's been really cool to have the ability to interact with the players from a management level and also be able to understand what players need and what they want. Being a player myself, I know what the toll of camp and those things take on the players. So being able to work hand in hand with Mike, Jeff, and our head coach, Tom Manas, to be able to give our players everything that they deserve from food, amenities, training, all those things, to then watch them correlate that onto the field. It's a cool, different side of the coin that I'm really enjoying.
I asked your assistant coach, Jeremy Richardson, J-Rich, this the other day in media day. I said, when game day happens and you see the introductions and the fires breathe and the crowd's going crazy, as a former athlete, J-Rich, a champion with the Albany Empire on the roster, how are you going to feel? He's like, I already been coached up that I need to be ready to remind myself that I'm a coach. For you, I don't think Coach Manas is me coaching you up, but we've already touched on it. You're a former athlete. Have you thought about how you're going to feel on game day yet?
See, that it's something that I've tried to think about, and it's going to be a learning curve for me, just like everything else as I'm talking about, because I know it as soon as I walk into that arena that day in the build up. We have our block party starting at 5:00. The live band's going to be playing. The atmosphere is going to be going. And it's going to be a great environment inside of the MVP arena on April 23rd. So I'm trying to prepare myself for it, but I also know as soon as our intro hits and our guys run out onto that field and the fireworks are going, I'm going to be ready to jump over the wall and be running out there with him. Unfortunately, J. Rich has Coach Manas to calm him down. I'm going to be standing next to Mike Corda and Jeff Levesque. And I don't know between the three of us who's going to be calming who down, because all of us are going to be ready to be going over the walls, just rooting on our guys, getting the job done against Carolina.
I wish I could volunteer my services. I'll be up in like the 300s with Andrew Santillo calling the game. So no blocks on me or blindside hits or like Randy Moss style catches. Let's keep all that stuff to Jeff Levesque and Mike Cord and everybody else down there. That is their problem you'll have to deal with down there. All right, very good. Well, look, we already gave the advice for college athletes. You gave great advice about recruiting and tape and working hard and everything else. But maybe there's a Hobart student, a Shaker student, somebody from upstate New York who just heard your story and they're thinking, man, Matt Woods got to play college football, succeed, and he transitioned from a job in the financial department to working in sports every single day. I know it's still so early in your career doing this, but for somebody who's hearing this story for the first time, what's the best advice you can offer them to get where you are to your career?
So as I mentioned, being able to adapt to different situations, I would probably say that's the top of my list. At the same time, kind of connecting back to our high school film study and being able to get your tape out via social media, I would say that would be my number two, using the business side of social media with LinkedIn. For me, I was someone who was shy and kind of intimidated by LinkedIn and being able to get on the phone with people and talk to people about potential opportunities, whether it's an internship, a paid position, full-time, part-time. I was a little hesitant because I didn't have as much confidence in myself to be able to present myself, whether it be via email, via LinkedIn message, or on the phone. And I will admit that I was a little maybe trigger happy and gun shy to reach out onto potential opportunities. So for any young student athlete out there, high school or college, whether you're trying to get into a college or close that gap between college and that professional life of yours, don't be scared to reach out. Don't be scared to make that connection on LinkedIn, on social media, and throw your resume out there, because the worst thing that can happen is they say no or you don't hear anything back, but at least you gave yourself the opportunity to be in the conversation. I can speak on my opportunity with the Albany Empire. It was something that I had gone back and forth in my head on, and I finally just said, why don't I just give Mike a call? It could be great. It could be nothing, but I don't know if I don't ask. So I would just say, when you have that opportunity, when it comes across your LinkedIn page or your college's network, alumni network, make the call, shoot the email, because the worst thing that could happen is a no. The best thing that can happen is a conversation that opens up a door to something that you never saw coming. And I can speak to that perfectly, just because I never thought I'd find myself working for an arena football team anywhere, let alone in my backyard in Albany, New York. And I couldn't be happier or more fortunate for the opportunity that I've been given.
Matt Woods, Vice President, Director of Sales, and who knows what his next promotion will be, a part of the Albany Empire. Thank you so much for doing this. I know how insanely busy you guys are getting towards kickoff and the season getting underway. It has been awesome to watch you, because I talked to you, and I'll say as a young man, I talked to you when you were at Hobart. Yep. And watching the transition from you as a young man to a pro has been awesome. You've been blowing everybody away with your work ethic and keeping that attitude. I'm proud as a statesman to call you a fellow statesman for the great job you've been doing for the Empire. I'm thrilled to watch everything you guys do this upcoming season. Best of luck, man. I'm looking forward to staying connected for the next few years. Happy to have a statesman on the Empire team, and let's go Empire and hip Hobart.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.